Holy One, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing to you. And may we hear what only you know we need to hear. Amen. So one of the first South Church meetings that I ever went to when I first got here in the fall was a Garden of Gratitude meeting, which included a lovely little potluck. And I can't tell you the joy I had just telling people, I only have to drive 2 miles down the road, and I'm going to a garden ministry meeting. It just made me so happy. But the thing that was different about this little potluck was that every person there had taken so much time and care preparing what they brought. So it was the end of summer, beginning of fall, so the harvest was plentiful. So some of the wonderful things we had, still juicy tomatoes, and there were sweet potatoes and fresh greens, and and husk cherries. Now, if you don't know what a husk cherry is, how many people know what a husk cherry is? Oh, pretty good. All right. I didn't know what a husk cherry was before last year. Husk cherries are these amazingly sweet little fruit that are apparently a superfood, so they're really good for you. And if you have a chance to wander back to the garden, August, September, right? Yeah. You will see there will be an abundance of husk cherries, so try them out. So all of this beautiful food and prepared with so much love. And something that I had never experienced before was everyone went around and each person told us what they had prepared and where it was from. Not just, I was really happy that I bought organic sweet potatoes to make my soup out of. I did not know that we were going to go around and tell folks what things were made of. But it was amazing, though, because many things had come from the people's gardens themselves, and some things had come from the Garden of Gratitude, and many things had come from our community, whether it was meat from our community, whether it was organic cheese from a sweet pea farm. But here this was, so thoughtfully, carefully prepared. It was very sacred. It was very holy. God is in this place, and I didn't even know it, says Jacob, after God has come to him in a dream. Now, I have to say, I'm surprised that Jacob remembered anything from this dream, because did you hear what he was sleeping on? Who heard what he was sleeping on? A rock. He had a rock under his head. Who does that? Maybe that was the custom at the time, but that was amazing to me. But nonetheless, Jacob wakes up, and for maybe the first time in his life, he recognizes that God is with him right there. Right there, right where we stand, on the ground we are on. So imagine with me for a minute. Imagine that you're in your favorite getaway spot in nature somewhere. So picture that place and breathe in the air in that place. Listen to the sounds. Think about the smells in that place. Notice the land. That land is holy. God is there. Now, imagine you're in a city, someplace where maybe people are having a pretty hard time just making it by. Now, picture that place and breathe in that air. Think about the smells and the sounds in that place. God is there too. That land is holy. Now, imagine you're at work or maybe someplace you volunteer or someplace that you frequent often. And picture that place and breathe in that air. Listen to the sounds, smell the smells. And even in a workplace or a library or a place you volunteer, God is there. That land is holy. How often do we walk around not even noticing the ground, the earth under our feet? How often do we notice that it's holy? Well, I don't know. Often? For me, maybe not so often until it comes to writing a sermon like this one. But the good news is Jacob was like that too. He was so caught up in his own life. He was under the illusion that he was the center of the universe. Imagine that. How often do we do this? But in a way, I can't blame Jacob for this, because Jacob, as the story goes, as you might remember, he left home because he needed to leave home, because he was a trickster. He was trying to get the blessing that was not really his due to get. So his dad was getting old, and maybe he didn't see so well or hear so well, and so Jacob pretended to be the older brother Esau to get the blessing from his dad. And his dad, not knowing that, he was being tricked, got the blessing which probably meant that he was to inherit the land and all of the family's wealth. So he tricked him, he got the blessing, but then his brother found out, and when the brother found out, he was pretty mad. So Jacob, yeah, right, he was mad. So Jacob had to hightail it out of there, right? So this is where we find Jacob in this story. His name actually in Hebrew actually means schemer. I love that word, schemer. Do you guys use that in your family? Whenever somebody gets a smirk on their face or whenever eyes start to twinkle a little bit in our home, we know that someone is scheming. And my favorite scheme, well, I didn't do it, but the favorite scheme that came to mind when I thought about this was when someone was sent out to pick up a used couch for a new home. And they came home with a used motorcycle instead. But schemer, yes, so Jacob is this schemer. He's so caught up in his own life that he does not notice anything but himself and his story and his life. And then he comes to this place and puts this stone under his head, but he there meets God. And God just says, look, you were having to steal this blessing, but you didn't have to steal it at all because this blessing is already yours. This ground is yours. This ground is sacred. I am with you. Wow. And sometimes I think that we are tricksters just like Jacob. We take from the earth without replenishing it, trying to convince ourselves that nothing will come of our taking. We live in an age when sacred things are objectified. We live in this time of machines, and so sometimes we treat the land and the water and the air, and sometimes even each other, like machines that can be controlled. God steps in and reminds us that all of creation is holy, sacred, not to be objectified, to be cared for. And God blesses us with more than enough. So, I believe that taking care of the earth and the environment is the number one issue of our time. We may try to trick our minds into believing otherwise, but the reality is we humans do not sustain the earth sustains us. And really, we're not separate. We humans are a part of the earth, and the earth is a part of us. In fact, we are made of some of the same stardust. So there are moments, and I hope that many of you or all of you have had these moments when I just stand there and look around and think, oh my goodness, I am part of this. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And that is an experience that I desperately want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to experience as well. In fact, it's an experience that I desperately want every person on this planet to have. So, You say, okay, Dawn, okay, this is a big issue. What can one person do? Does my little bit of recycling and driving a fuel-efficient car make a difference? Yes, it makes a difference. And I know, for a long time I've been deeply concerned about the environment, and I've tried to do the little things that I can do, not using so much plastic, composting, and trying to minimize my use of fossil fuels. And I am encouraged because there is a lot happening today, right? There are, I just recently saw the new solar farm up near Big Y. There's solar and wind farms going up. People all around are putting solar panels on their homes. There is this movement towards smaller houses, simpler living, and there is all sorts of, there are rallying cries for divestment from fossil fuel. So all of these things are very hopeful, I think. I'm also aware that this issue is intricately and complexly linked to many other issues of our time. It is absolutely linked to race and poverty. So, I tend to, when I am in the face of huge, complex issues like this, sometimes I recognize that it's overwhelming, and when it becomes overwhelming, we can be led to not do anything because it seems so hard and so big. But there is another way to think about it. It hit me hard when I first read this scripture from today. I will bring you back to this very ground, said God. I will bring you back. I had never thought about the environmental crisis as a way back to relationship. What if God is speaking to us through the land, through this environmental crisis, calling us back, bringing us back to the ground, bringing us back to relationship with God and relationship with each other and relationship with ourselves, our true selves. This is sacred land. God is in this place. And where God's Spirit is, new things will be created. So it's time for us to make our way back to the ground with which God blesses us. And what if this call brings us to heal ourselves? Not just the land, but ourselves and our relationships and our relationship with God. So here at South Church, we are so blessed. We have 2 garden ministries. We have the Sow and Reap garden ministry, which blesses us with beautiful flowers, including a wildflower garden. And we have the Garden of Gratitude ministry, which supports the garden, which we'll go to after worship, that actually supports some of the food that is used for the community kitchen here. So I asked these gardeners to share a little bit about how the garden blesses them, and I'd like to share some of their thoughts. Being with the land brings spiritual healing and wholeness. It gives me a chance to meditate and reflect. It gives me a sense of peacefulness. It makes me grateful. Just looking at it brings me joy. I have witnessed the healing power of putting hands into the dirt and caring for new life. The anxious become calm. The angry find forgiveness. The hurt can heal. Being with the land brings friendship. We shared stories and garden tools, shooed away yellow jackets, laughed as we planted and weeded, and these amazing gardeners became my friends. Our roots are deep and true. Tomatoes, fresh lettuce, green beans, and chard are rich in nutrients and good for us all. So is friendship. And being with the land can dismantle walls that separate us. In the garden, generations mingle and get to know each other We have such a tendency to separate ourselves into groups, but the garden is for everyone with a capital E. I have seen people come together across many social barriers: age, color, religion, economic status, sexual orientation. Being with the land shifts our focus. The shift from greed to sharing. Ideas, knowledge, resources, harvest, it spills over into the way the gardener then views other resources, sparking a deeper understanding of sharing all of the world's valuable resources for a new definition of economy. Being with the land moves us toward communion with all of God's creation. I wish I had written this one myself. There is the paying attention, but I didn't. There is the paying attention to the ground beneath our feet. By being in the garden, we begin ever so slowly. Okay, Sandra and Denny are getting to me. I got this crying thing going on. Whew, okay. So, ever so slowly, we begin to know our place, adjust our lives to fit our place, rather than trying to manipulate or bend our place to accommodate us. By being in the garden, hands in soil, I begin to really feel it. The struggle between my own desire for more and convenience versus knowing I ought to do better by Mother Nature gives way to communion, to knowing there is no division there. And then the struggle gives me up. And even if that sense of surrender lasts only for a little while, it is a great freedom. Now, don't all of you just want to run out to the garden and help out? Although I did hear there were 18 people out there yesterday, which is fantastic. But do you see what's happening here? We are called to be a church of justice. Of course, yes, we are. And some people will be able to do that by going out to a rally or writing a letter to their congressperson. And that is great. And what's happening here is from the inside out. Because these gardeners, these people have come back to the land and made it their own. And here they have found themselves, and here they find God, and here they have found relationship with others, and here they're able to bridge gaps, barriers. This is work from the inside out. And this is important work. And what if that is exactly what God is calling us to? These relationships. Now, I go back to the story of that first potluck, because you'll remember what really grabbed me was the care that was being taken. And when we are in relationship, when we care deeply, this is where God is. So what if you noticed the ground you were standing on and called it holy? And what if you looked at the food you were about to eat and called it holy? And what if you looked in the eyes of the person in front of you and called them holy? God is bringing us back to the ground, to this holy ground. What is your part in that sacred journey?